Welcome everyone. My name is Mary Louise Helbig, and tonight we're here to talk about business canvases. There's two of them, business model canvas and the lean canvas, and we'll talk a little bit about both. And we'll go through about how to use this tool and how it can help you, and I have some handouts for you as well. And at the end, I have some information on additional resources. There's many resources available online. But as I said, Mary Louise Helbig, most people call me ML. I have worked both in the corporate environment as well as for 4 different tech startups. And most recently, I was the executive director of I-10, which is the Information Technology and Entrepreneur Network. So it's a nonprofit that serves tech startups in the St. Louis region. And so that was a really fun gig. That's how Penny and I met each other. So last time I was here, we talked about funding and finding funding sources. And one of the things that came up in that conversation was writing a business plan. And we had some conversation around that, and I've been part of other conversations where people say, oh, don't waste your time writing a business plan. You know, no one's going to look at it, or it's you know, outdated as soon as you finish writing it. In my experience, working in startups, I think business plans are very important because it provides the structure and discipline for you to think through your business. And then if you have to go ask people for money, it explains to them in great detail, you know, why this is a good investment for them. So I really don't believe that business plans are not necessary. You know, perhaps in Silicon Valley, it's a different world there, but in the Midwest and where we live, they are. They still are. But I will say this, in the good old days, and I've had to write many business plans myself, the 30 plus 40, 50 page business plans, I don't think those are necessary or required. What is more important is substance, and having the substance and the complete overview of your business. So we all have, you know, skills sets and strengths. And some of us are good marketers, some of us are good salespeople, some of us are good operational people. Well, we need to make sure when we write that business plan that all the components of the plan, even the ones that maybe scare us a little bit or we don't like to think about or don't want to think about, get addressed and get clarity and definition around them. So with that said, at our last session, we had some of you who were there probably remember that conversation, and that question came up. So one of the things that came up was the business canvas and that tool and how you can really use that, not only to help you start to write a really solid business plan, but it's a 1-page document. And it's something as an entrepreneur / business owner that is a really good tool to have in your hip pocket all the time. And something that you should, once you write it, you should probably pull it out. You know, if you're in really early stages, once a month. If you're, you know, a little farther along, maybe quarterly, and just look at it. Or if something really significant happens in the marketplace where you operate and engage customers and get product and sell, like the world we live in today, you might want to take it out and look it over and say, you might not need to redo the whole thing, but you might need to redo or address a certain section. So today we're going to talk about both the business model canvas and the lean canvas. Are any of you familiar with these tools, or have you used them? Yeah, okay, good. And you've been looking at it. Okay. So I'm going to start with the business model canvas. And so this was originally created by Alexander Osterwalder, and it's a very good tool, and I'll go over it, but I think it's a tool that is more designed for existing businesses that want to grow or expand. And you'll see why when we look at and compare the two. Following what Alexander did with the business model canvas came the lean canvas. And this was an adaptation of the business model canvas by Ash Mariah, and he is a successful tech entrepreneur. So he basically took what Alexander had done and did it for more of a startup or early stage company. And so we'll talk about, as I said, we'll talk about this in more detail, but the reason Ash did this is he wanted it to be much more entrepreneurial focused and actionable. Like, so when you write it and you finish it, you kind of also know what you have to go do and get done to move your business forward, if that makes sense. Maybe not yet, but in a minute. Okay, so I think it's important to understand that the canvas is designed for the entrepreneur. It's not designed to share with your customers or, you know, your advisors or investors. But that's not to say it wouldn't help to get their feedback on it, but understanding the audience for the canvas is the entrepreneur themselves. So it's really not like if you were going out to raise money or ask people for money, you flip that out there and go, look at my canvas. Because a lot of people might go, okay, whatever, but, you know, they want the meat, you know, they want the spreadsheets or they want the, you know, so just again, understanding the audience of it. With the concept in mind of being able to do things quickly and effectively, so what they say is you should be able to complete this one-page document in 20 minutes. I will tell you I've never been able to complete one in 20 minutes. Because even though it literally is one page, your brain really starts cranking. And I mean, and so an hour, maybe an hour. I would say if you're on it more than an hour, then you actually have another problem, which is maybe you really haven't fully thought through your business. But so it really is something that you should be able to sit down and in an hour's time, half hour to an hour's time, be able to fill in information in each of these boxes. And that will probably tell you how well thought through you have of a business concept. So it is a validation tool. And as I mentioned, it is a precursor to writing a business plan. So I don't know when you were in grade school or taking writing classes, if your teacher still made you do outlines before you even started writing, if you remember that concept. Okay, good. That's what this is like to me. It's like a outline or a framework. Because I think, and what I've actually done it is, once I've completed this effectively, pretty effectively, then I start writing my business plan. And I really try to use one page per box. And because I really believe too that, as I said earlier, it's not about how verbose you can be, but it's about get to the point, be clear, specific, and direct. And if you're rambling on and on and on, I've also, in my career, been on the other side of the table where I've been on the investor side of things. It won't get read. So that's also one of the challenges. But, and I'll tell you, if we were in bioscience, this doesn't work in bioscience. So to be clear, right? So, but we're talking about product and service companies, technology/software companies. This tool will work. And then, as I mentioned earlier, once you write this, and you feel good about it, and you've gone over it with your advisors or your partners, and everybody says, "Yeah, this is it. This is the meat of the matter here." Go back and look at it. Once a month, once a quarter, and just like I said, just make sure that if something has changed or circumstances, market has changed, you update that accordingly. Okay, so this is the first iteration. This is the business model canvas. And what I want to kind of share with you is the real estate here. So at the very top left, we have where you would write down who your key partners are in business, what key activities you need to get done, what key resources you need, your value proposition, customer relationships, your channels, and your customer segments. Okay? And then the bottom half goes more into the operational financial side of things. So what is your cost structure and what are your revenue streams? Pretty straightforward, right? So, so as I mentioned, this is the business model canvas. This is the first iteration of this tool by Alexander Osterwalder. And as I said, I feel like it is a little bit more about a business that exists because it's talking about your customer relationships and your key partners. You may not have those yet, right? But not that those aren't important, you can still get to them in the lean canvas. But here's the evolution of it from the business model canvas to the lean canvas. So you still have the same amount of real estate. It's still this one-page document, right? There's 9 blocks on here still. The operational stuff is still at the bottom on cost structure and revenue streams. But what Ash Mariah did was he really started out more with early stage concept issues like, what is the problem you're solving for? Right? So it doesn't assume you already know that. What is your solution? Instead of key resources, it's key metrics, like what are the critical things that you need to measure? And then instead of customer relationships, it's your unfair or competitive advantage. So, as I said, business model canvas is fine if you're an existing business and you're expanding with a new product launch or new geographic expansion or something like that. But the lean canvas is really more oriented to someone who's a new, young company and trying to build and grow their business. Any questions? Okay, so now we're going to look at the lean canvas in more depth here. And I'm going to share with you the one-pager, so you can scribble those for yourself to help. Oh, original. Thanks. No problem. So let's look at the lean canvas now in its kind of clean form. And I'm going to kind of show you at a high level how to look at this. So, okay, so first let's start on the far left side. So you have, what problem are you solving for? So anywhere from 1 to 3 problems. Don't try to save the world, but really it should be about 1 to 3. And the alternatives there is really about like who else is doing this, or who would your customers go to if they didn't have you? If you're creating something really novel and new, it may not be anyone.
So is the problem mean what the problems what the challenges for the company would be, the startup, or it's more what the void is?
What the void's for the customer.
Okay.
From the customer's perspective, why is someone going to do business with you? Because what problem are you solving? You are providing fresh, organic, locally grown, accessible produce, right?
Yeah, trying to create jobs, trying to create a pipeline of future farmers.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then, so what is your solution? So how do you address that? And then key metrics, key activities you measure. And I will tell you on this one, if you're really a true startup company, it could be really just very rudimentary activities at this point. But again, you keep getting this document out and you check things off. Really the key hurdles that you have to accomplish to keep moving the business forward, that might be what you have in there up until the time that you start securing customers. Like it could be testing, it could be product testing if you aren't in business yet. But then when you flip over to securing your first customers, it might be getting my first customer by October 1st, 2022, my first paying customer, something like that. And then once you get there and you hit that milestone, then it could start to be, I need 100 customers by October 1st of 2023, that kind of thing. So then you start putting your key metrics in, and those that can be a very active kind of box, if you will. Your unique value proposition, this is your key marketing message. So what is it you say to your customers that is going to make them want to do business with you? What differentiates you? What makes you relevant to them? And why are you special or unique at it? So that unique value proposition is hugely your marketing statement. It's not a dissertation, it is a statement. Sometimes it helps people, this high-level concept thing, we are the X for Y. It's like, Intel Inside or different things. Like sometimes, particularly with an innovative product that's never been done before, people, if it's intangible, people can't kind of like can't do it in their head. So for instance, I was working with a tech startup that did real estate, and it was homes on your app and finding homes on your app and that kind of thing. So they said something like, we're the H&R Block for real estate. You know what I mean? So they drew an analogy, and then people are like, oh, okay, so I can basically, do this myself. Like you can do your taxes yourself, kind of thing. So sometimes those analogies can really help you communicate to an audience. Like I said, particularly if it's a product that's like doesn't exist, because they're like, well, I don't get it, because they've never seen it before or heard about anything like it. Then your unfair advantage is something that cannot be easily copied or bought. It's wonderful if you have intellectual property or a patent on something, but it could be bringing together skilled people and in a location that's unique, or so there can be unique things that can't easily be replicated. So if I was going to open this as a coffee shop, I could talk about, well, it wasn't the old post office, it's a historical building, it's got this incredibly cool architecture, and so that's what's going to make me different and unique from going into, say, a Starbucks, that they all look the same and, it's pretty blah, blah, blah. And then your channels are basically how are you going to get to your customer. And the reason this is important is that everybody's got to sell. Everybody has to sell. So how are you going to engage and get to your customers so that they consume / buy your product? And so understanding what your channels are, but then what you need to do to make those channels work effectively for you. One example I get a lot of times with tech startups is they're like, well, we're going to build this really cool app, and we're going to have this really cool app, and then we're just going to hire resellers to sell it. And they're kind of like, and I'm like, you are so not done. Because, you still have to manage that channel. You still have to track them, you still have to train them, you still have to provide marketing support, you still have to provide technical support. So again, it's just really important to understand if whatever channels you might use for your product service, that you understand that channel and how you're going to have to manage it. And then customer segments. So who is your target buyer? Is that an age group? Is it socioeconomic, defined by socioeconomic data? Is it by geography? Is it what. So understanding who your target customers are, and then ultimately, as a part of that, is understanding who are going to be your early adopters and why. So what do those people look like? And because then you're going to have to build marketing plans around getting to them. So then at the bottom we have again our cost structure. So what does it cost to produce your product, to sell your product? Do you have to buy equipment or facilities? You have to hire people. And then what are your revenue streams? So is it, if you're an early stage company, it could be a bank loan. It could be customers, signing early customers up. It could be investments. So whatever income, say in the next 12 to 24 months, you're going to get and use to move your business forward. So there's a line down the middle of the page, right? See that line right through unique value propositions? And at the bottom of the page, you'll see, if the copy came out, kind of, okay. On the left side, it's dividing the page in half because the things on the left side are really product/service oriented components of your business, right? So you're solving a problem, what is the solution, what are your measures of success, and then the unique value proposition is part of that because that's how you describe it to your customers. The right side is more about the marketplace. So those are the things that are kind of outside of your business that you have to deal with and manage in order to get your business running and running well. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. Is this helping?
Yes, I'm so actively doing it right now.
Okay.
So I'll have a delayed response shortly.
No, that's okay. Well, and you had already started looking at things online and everything. And I will tell you, there is incredible amount of online resources for this. Fabulous. I mean, Ash Mariah, his Lean Canvas page is phenomenal, and he's got videos, and just fantastic. So you won't be for lack of support in doing this and working through it. And I've got that on the list that I'll share with you at the end. Okay, so for conversation purposes, because I know this is kind of a lot, so I pulled Google's Lean Canvas, and just to show you how they filled it out, So for Google, when it was starting out, it is really hard to find relevant information on the internet. Where do you go to find relevant information? And so at the time, their existing alternatives were Yahoo, AltaVista, and Excite. So their solution was to create a technology that could analyze user searches fast. So when you type in, what is the best restaurant in Alton, Illinois, their algorithms are picking up those words and going out to massive amounts of servers that are just bigger than I don't know what, and they're pulling all that information together to push back out at you what is really helpful and relevant. And so that's, a beautiful thing that happens behind the big magic curtain at Google. So their key metrics are number of search queries, percentage of users who found what they wanted, fast. So that's how they measure if they're being effective. So, unique selling proposition is quick search results, more relevant content, and it's, quick and reliable web searching is the high-level concept. Their advantage is their page rank algorithms. So it's the crazy algorithms they have written behind the scenes that, decipher the information, organize it, and then feed it back to you, and prioritize it. That's ultimately, and they own that in a big way. So channels are basically users on the internet, are user intents, wait a minute, channels, user intents. I guess that just means, that's interesting. I didn't read that right. That way, when I first pulled this up, I'm not actually sure what they mean by that, as their channel. It's just individual users' desire, I guess.
That's how I read it, because
Yeah.
it's open.
Yeah,
Right?
it's-
It's whatever you put in there. So.
Right, it's kind of, yeah, whatever anybody wants at
So
a
it's-
given moment in time,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's very personalized
Right.
to you and what you're looking for.
And then customer segments, web users and early adopters, Stanford graduates. So that was the market they initially launched and worked through, and where they got their testing and validation done. So their cost structure is obviously product development and hosting those massive servers, monumental, big brain machines that they have, and they have server farms, in different places in the country, and for backup and speed, and and then the revenue streams was largely through investors because it's a free service, and then advertising revenues, which they added on and now do, of course. So, any questions or thoughts about that? No.
So, yeah, I'm just kind of spitballing, but,
No.
in terms of like, Google wasn't the first search engine,
Mm-mm.
right? And,
No.
it wasn't
No.
some novel concept. And for me, I get that way a lot. Like, for me, urban farming is not something
Right.
it makes a lot of sense, and it's taken off way wilder than here in many, like, kind of West Coast metros or really dense urban areas, so I almost feel like I overcomplicate, like, how to say that it just needs to be, it's almost like a replication with these kind of unique, how about it sort of, I don't know, it seems like such a niche question, but like, how do you take a concept that is so popular and yet, sort of use this tool to seem unique?
Yeah, so I think though, the nature of what you do has specific geographic demands, and so people want to buy local, right?
Sure.
So and they want good quality fresh food local. So and accessibility for people who otherwise maybe can't get.
Yeah, for
Right?
sure.
So that is, I think, by nature of what you're doing. I'm not sure that, for instance, someone that lives in South County, St. Louis, would drive all the way over here, right?
Right.
So by virtue of what you do, it has a local geographic.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And I mean, that's kind of a question, so.
I know.
But I mean, that's how I think I would. And then, of course, then there's aspects of what is your product offering? We were talking, you were doing a lot of, you said, greens this year and things like that. So, are you gonna focus on certain products, or,
Yes, yeah, I mean, the idea with the greens is that it's such a quick turnaround, field-wise, like the days to maturity, and then what you can kind of regrow and cut again before you clear that bed and start
right, have to
over.
replant.
Yeah. But you do want to put some sort of longer-term crops in other people's yards. We're called Alton Yard Farms because we do want to basically take over other yards also. And by virtue of like sort of that person doesn't have to mow their grass or deal with landscaping. In the meantime, I'm going in the other direction, like I'm putting things back into the soil that were sort of almost being sucked out by, there's sort of like this almost like an oxymoron going on with the concept itself that I have to be sensitive to folks that also like really take a lot of pride in, the things that they have made pretty and good so far, but
Well,
yeah, so I'm going to put longer term crops in other
Well, and I
yards.
think something that you said too is that you're engaging the community in production.
Yeah, right.
So, I mean, that's another component. And so you're building community through gardening, but also for some people, I guess it could be a source of income.
Yes, our whole.
And so there's those kinds of things that are definitely part of your value.
Yeah.
I'd say focusing on your unfair advantage. I mean, there's lots of
Yeah.
sound studios and potters and events to do and things like
Right.
that. What makes you stand out?
Right.
Is it your customer service? Is it your,
Right,
different things
right.
like that?
Gotcha.
Right.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, so those are all things, boxes I would check to say those are
It's
things.
getting bigger now. It's getting bigger, but that's good. That's
Yeah.
really good. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or? Clear as mud?
No, no.
Okay, so how to complete this? So let's talk a little bit about that process. So I said earlier, they say 20 minutes, I say an hour, so somewhere in between, right? The idea is that you really should be able to just kind of sit down in one sitting and pretty much work your way through it. It may not be perfect, it may not be wholly complete, but you're 70% there, right? And they say it's okay to leave sections blank and say, I don't know, I just don't know yet. And then go out to your partner or your advisors or mentors and say, or go back to the drawing board and do more research on that topic. But don't overthink it. If you don't know, just say, I need to work on this one and move on. And then think in the terms of the present. So really write with a kind of action, getting it done mentality. So, when we talked about those key metrics, like what are some of the things that if you think about, well, I've got to test the product, so I've got to get product testing done by September. Well, if you write that down, you want 10 customers to engage in product testing and be finished by September 1st. Now you got to develop an action plan to get that done, and you've got a measurable thing there. And I think you all probably know the rules of stating kind of goals is like it should be time-bound, measurable, right? And so it'll just help you make sure you can keep moving things forward. To Penny's question, when we first got started, is customer-centric focused. So when you're thinking about writing the problem, it's not what problem you need to solve as a business owner today. This is fundamentally, what is it you're solving for, problem you're solving for your customers, which is basically the reason they're going to want to do business with you. And then as you look at this and you say, oh, okay, well, we all complete forms from left to right. That's just kind of how we're taught. That's our our framework for doing things. But really, there actually is, as we look at this, a suggested way to approach this. So now that we kind of looked at the real estate on the page and we know kind of that line comes down the middle to divide product on the left and marketing on the right, this is the suggested way to fill it out. That's what these numbers are. So you first start with the problem and you identify the 1 to 3 problems you're trying to solve. If you're really early stage and you get up to 5, that's okay. But, keep in mind that, again, don't try to solve too many problems for too many people. But if it just gets things on paper for you, I say go for it. Don't go more than 5. Okay, so you start with the problem. So I am solving the problem of COVID-19 by creating a vaccine. Number 2 is all the way across the page over in customer segments. Who am I doing that for? So now you got to start saying, well, who is my customer? Who is my target customer? Who are you solving for? And be able to define them. And be able to define them as best as you can, as clearly, with as much detail as you can, because that will serve you in your other areas of marketing, sales, etc. So the better you can define your target customers, really who they are, and the better you'll be able to fill out the other components. So then you define your problem, you say who you're solving it for. Well, now you got to talk to these people and tell them what problem you're solving for them and why they should do business with you, which brings you right back into the middle of the page to your unique value proposition. So this is that clear, compelling message. And it is a message. It is not a paragraph. It should be brief. And these can be hard to write. So if you don't have the absolute wordsmith around it, but what differentiates you and why somebody wants to pay attention to you, just write those things in there. Just get those words in there, and then you can work on crafting it. And I'll tell you what, with your value proposition statements, my experience has been that you never get it written right the first time. You've got to have the essence of the message there, and then you can write it, and you'll try it, and you'll test it, and you'll modify it, and you'll find out that a word that you might be using to describe something doesn't resonate with your customers. I've found a lot with tech companies, they tend to use too much technical jargon, and so while they're saying the right things, it's not coming through. So your unique value proposition is something that can just take time to work through. But just get the core elements of it written down, and then just continue to wordsmith it. Say it to people, and if you see their eyes roll back in their head, you know that it's not resonating and you need to tweak it. Okay, so then your unique value proposition, then you hop over to your solution. So what is it that you are doing? What product or service are you providing to them? How are your channels? Bumps back over. How are you going to get it to them? And then it drops down to your cost structure and your revenue streams. And pops back up to then what key activities you need to measure to demonstrate that you're making progress, effective progress. And then what is your unfair advantage? Sound effects. Any questions? This is really something that you just got to dive in. And you probably all have the components and parts of this in your head and written down somewhere and Post-it notes somewhere. Or the other thing, a lot of people do this with Post-it notes. So they'll take this page and they'll start with Post-it notes, because then you can move them around and you can peel them off and put them back on, or you can say, write something down and you stick it there and you go, okay, move it over. And then that a lot. So I've seen people use Post-it notes that way, and it helps them kind of do that brain dump without getting into the analytics too quickly and too much, and then not being able to get anything done. So I would suggest trying that. Okay, so here are some resources. I'm going to send this deck to Sarah, so you'll have all of this. But as I mentioned, leanstack.com, that's Ash Mariah's site that has all the tools and little videos on how to, he actually has little sessions, online sessions and videos on each one of the 9 blocks. So if today you want to work on your unique value proposition, you could look at that and then just try to work through that, instead of, also trying to eat the elephant all at once. So I would highly recommend that. Canvanizer, that site has both business model canvas and lean canvas information. Also, these tools, you can, if you're an online person, when I do this kind of stuff, I like paper. I can just move things around. Like I said, like with the Post-it notes and stuff, I tend to like it on paper. But all of this is available. You can download tools, templates that you can do online if you'd like. Any other questions? Anything else?
It feels like you would move pretty quickly to your business plan after you felt like
You can, and
Have
it
these
will be so
answers.
much easier because,
Yeah.
like I said, and you know, now granted, I said 1 page per item. You know, when you get into your financials, you know, you're going to have, if you have an existing business, they're going to want to see historicals, and then they're going to want to see your current, and then they're going to see, you know, projections. So that's not all going to fit on 1 page. So financials aside, depending upon where you are. But everything else, I really do believe that, you know, if you can get down to that level of information. I always have been a person, too, that, for instance, if you're looking at your competitive advantage and you're looking at, you know, when you write your business plan, people want to know who your competition is, and so you should do a really good amount of research on that. And I often would have just 1 page on competition, but in the appendix, you know, I might have 10, right? Because you really just want to get to the point, and you want to tell the story clearly, directly, concisely, effectively. But if someone challenges you or has questions and you can demonstrate that you've done the research behind all of it, that's golden.
Can you give any other, just, I know each individual situation is completely different, but like, what are some like golden unfair advantages? Like, what are some things that really do the trick to set businesses apart from their competition?
It depends upon what type of business it is, right? And
I guess it depends on what matters most to your customer. I mean, some people are looking for the cheapest price no matter what. And
Right.
other people would pay for quality or pay for, you know.
exactly. So let's say you're a clothing store, and it's just, you know, about your clothes are, you know, what are the dollar store, you know, everything's $10, you know, and some people will love that and be all about that. So they're not going to shop at Frontenac and it's Saks Fifth Avenue, you know, it's not who they are or what they want to do, and vice versa. So it depends on what your product or service is.
You know, it sounds like to me, sometimes the story behind the owner, the way the business got started, like that's maybe the same thing in a way, like where it always depends. But that is true, like that's truly what's the most unique aspect of any business, right? Is who are you and why are you doing,
How
why
did
are
you
you
get here?
doing this? What are you doing here and why?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
particularly in the very early stages, because you aren't in the marketplace and you don't have customers yet. So you're selling someone on your concept. So if they're going to invest on you, yes, they want to understand that there's a need, a problem you're solving, there's a big enough customer base for it. But you're absolutely right. Then their next best bet is in the people that are running the company. And so knowing that you have the experience and the skills and, you know.
Isn't a startup almost always attractive to investors if they believe in that person?
Yes. And
Because that's what you're investing in is
the people.
the startup, the
Yes.
entrepreneur themselves.
Yes, yeah. So like a good example of that is a company called Locker Dome. They started in St. Louis. I forget what they're called now. I'm drawing a blank. They changed their name. And I can't go through all the history because my brain doesn't remember it all, but they first started out as a sports app, and I forget what it was. I don't even remember what the initial thing was. But they went through probably 4 or 5 iterations of their business and their business model to where they are today. And that took place over 10 years. But the people that invested in them invested in the founding team because of who they were and the belief in them. It's huge. I mean, the people component of that is very, very important. Because if it isn't working and you know, or they started out thinking, which also happens many, many, many times, particularly in product development, is you start out thinking, oh, you know, what did I just see? Play-Doh was actually created to clean wallpaper. And now it's used as it's a kid's toy. But I mean, so people find things and iterate things, and so one of the big things too that investors look at is that someone isn't overly sold on their idea and can't or isn't open to feedback or criticism or is inflexible, and if you discover something or the market changes, that you have the ability to adapt and change and find the, you know, a bigger, better path.
That's really interesting. Yeah, like the storytelling aspect of just sticking with it. Yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions?
No, this is great.
Hard work.
Yeah, how's that for unfair advantage?
It's
Just keep doing it.
it's really I love it. I'm a geek. Okay, I'll admit I'm a geek, but I love it. I love the mental exercise that it puts you through, and not in a, you know, in a one page, not overly daunting way. Like, you know, somebody says, okay, now go write that business plan, and you're like, ah, you know. If you start here, I guarantee you that, and what will happen too is it's flip-flops. So let's say you're going through this and you're right, and you get to one of the blocks and you were like, I don't think I can answer that today. Well, then you go do your research and you start doing all of that research and gathering that information and knowledge that allows you to come back and answer that question. And it goes both ways, right? So, yeah. And I think it can help, like I said earlier, you know, everybody's got different strengths and knowledge. And so, you know, I might feel more comfortable filling in different blocks than you do, but I still have to fill them in, and so do you. So it really kind of gives you that framework to say, all right, I really got to sit down, and like I said, go online and go to leanstack.com and look at how they describe writing your unique value proposition and what the key elements of that is. And it's short and concise and to the point, but it hits on those important, relevant, distinct things for your customers, so it resonates with them.